Productive procrastination. What a tricky little fiend. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Corinne and I talk about all things reading and writing on this channel. And recently I just finished the first draft of my book, so I'm going to be getting into some more writing content, following my process, but also going into the psychology and behaviour of writing a book. For those of you who don't know me yet, I have a degree in psychology and I also work professionally as an animal behaviourist. And we're not really so different from animals. So, a lot of what we know about behaviour can be applied to ourselves and our own productivity and our own behaviour. And I apply a lot of what I know about behaviour to my own behaviour to help me achieve the goals that I want to when it comes to writing my book. Because it's been a big goal of mine for a long time and it took a long time to get there. And that is because of productive procrastination. So, what is productive procrastination? I think everyone does this to a degree. It's particularly prevalent in people with ADHD. It's where you've got kind of a difficult, complex task or a task that you're not really up for doing for whatever reason. And in order to avoid that task, you kind of do something else, like clean the house, and you lie to yourself and say, oh, but it's okay because I'm being really productive. But really, it's just a kind of way of being avoidant of the one thing that you need to do and don't want to do and are not currently doing. And when we talk about it in this general sense, we're often talking about stupid little things that actually take an hour or 15 minutes. It might be putting away the laundry instead of putting it on that one chair in our bedrooms. It might be applying for a new passport, or even just like making a phone call to the doctors and booking that appointment. These are all things that we want to avoid for some reason or another, but we can usually force ourselves to eventually do them, and it takes a short amount of time and then it's over. Writing a book, on the other hand, is not that at all. It's probably one of the most difficult things you can do. It really is a marathon, and one writing session could be half an hour, it could be 1 hour on one day, but that's not going to write you a book. In order to write a book, you have to show up for many, many, many different half an hours and hours on many different days, and you have to keep going until it's done, which means that you've got ample opportunity to productively procrastinate. And the way writers do this isn't always just going and cleaning their house, although they might do that. They might even do those annoying little tasks like booking that doctor's appointment instead of writing that difficult scene and make progress with their life in those ways. But what I do when I'm productively procrastinating my writing, and what a lot of other writers do, is we research, we read craft books, we enroll in novel writing courses, we read novels in our genre, we construct detailed maps of our fantasy world. We might turn into George R. R. Martin or J.R.R. Tolkien and create a whole language, create a whole mythology that just never even shows up in the books in full because we're that into the behind the scenes of our project. And that's great and that's fun, and you're allowed to do what you want, and it's supposed to be fun. And these are all things that you do have to do. Of course, you have to read in your genre, of course, you have to do research, of course, you have to do some world building, but there is a limit to it, and I think you can even overdo it. I mean, look at George R. R. Martin. He's not even finished the books. He's written all of these really great side stories. He's created all of these history books and manuals, and the world he's built is amazing. He's got several different developed languages, Valyrian, Dothraki. But at the end of the day, fans of his, we just want the final two books. And we've lost hope that we're ever going to get them. And it's possible that he's even worked himself into a corner to the point where his world has gotten so complex behind the scenes, behind what's in the narrative, that he can't finish the books without ending up with a bunch of plot holes because he started the books ages and ages ago. He published the first book in like 1992, which is the year before I was born. And it's hard to keep all of that in your head and in your notebooks for like 30 plus years. So I don't want that for me and you. I want us to finish the books and the series that we start. And I want us to do that research and that behind the scenes work that is really important for making the book the best that it can be. So I've got a few tips today to share with you on how we can avoid falling into this trap, kind of as a PSA for me, because I'm currently in this trap myself, although I can kind of excuse it since I finished the first draft, yay. And I'm doing very specific work right now in order to go into the round of editing. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the way I'm doing things now that make it genuinely productive and not productive procrastination. I have done a specific needs assessment. I have written the book, first of all, and earlier in the process, in a period of productive procrastination, I reviewed the first half of that book and I noticed a lot of issues with it that I would need to fix in editing. So I've done a bit of a needs analysis. I've made a list of specific topics that I need to research further in order to develop them a bit more in the first round of editing and the developmental editing. There was also some craft books I wanted to review, things that I'd read in the past, also in a period of productive procrastination. I've forgotten a lot of that content now because so much time has passed, so I wanted to review some of these things, particularly things about overall structure, because that's one of the first things I'll be reviewing in the developmental edit. And I also know that some of my characters need a bit of a consistent story and a consistent arc map that I map against the whole plot. And that some of that got a little bit messy in the drafting. For example, some of the characters' backstories that is shared earlier in the novel, I kind of changed my mind about by the end. And so I was making reference to things that weren't consistent and there are continuity errors. So I know I need to do a bit of a sit down before going into the edit and decide definitively what these backstories are. And I've been spending my time doing this before I jump into the developmental edit. I then recommend getting through whatever stage you're on. Might be writing the first draft, might be editing like I am, and then reviewing the needs and then researching to what those current needs are. So once I've done my developmental edit, I will probably take another break and do some more craft level research or more writing exercises to really figure out my voice, figure out my writing kind of ticks and annoying things that I do, learn kind of sentence level refinement techniques because that's what I'll be doing in the later edit, and that's not really the goal of the current task of editing. That's all about story and what specifically happens and who it happens to and where it happens. And getting too into the weeds of trying to upskill my technical writing now and learning how to edit technical writing, that would just be a waste of time at this point because I'll end up going into the developmental edit, fixing grammar and fixing word choice when those scenes might be cut entirely or rewritten entirely. So it would be better for me to do that later. And I can set specific times aside to do that. And I recommend that you do that as well. And I'm not saying you don't do any research during the drafting process or before. I'd recommend doing it before, doing some plotting if you are a plotter, not a pantser, going in with a bit of an outline, a bit of a plan, knowing the market, doing some research on the topics that are going to be important for your book. But you need to set a deadline and you need to put it aside and you need to do the drafting at a certain point because you could end up doing research that's not going to be relevant. And the good thing about me doing this now, as opposed to when I was doing it while I was drafting in periods of procrastination, is that I know exactly what happens, what's strong in the story already, what's weak in the story already, and I now know where specifically I need to focus my research and then be very efficient with that. And of course, you also want to be quite choosy about what specific resources you use. You don't want to waste a lot of time reading loads and loads of things that aren't useful. Pick a few craft books from people that you trust, that have had good reviews, and read those one or two and stick to those. Once you read lots and lots of different sources, a lot of them say kind of the same thing, and eventually it'll just be familiar stuff and you'll kind of know what you're doing by that point. So be particular and choose resources that are reputable and that are going to give you what you genuinely need. Figure out what parts of your story are the weakest, maybe it's the world building, and then put a lot of your time and effort into researching world building and less into the things that you know are along the right lines. And make sure what you choose to read and study is just high quality and worth your time. Once you've done that, you've done a bit of a needs analysis, you've chosen your resources, you've chosen specific time periods where you're going to do that bit of work, and you've set deadlines of when to call it a day and when to sit down and start drafting again or editing. It's time to get in the right mindset for the nitty gritty, for doing the real work. This is where the little demon of productive procrastination will come in. You sit down to draft something that was really tricky It might be something that you've drafted in an earlier draft that you now need to fix and figure out, and you might just want to hit your head off a wall because earlier you has put a lot of placeholders and figure out laters and insert name here, and now future you has that as a task to do and you need to figure it out, and you just don't feel prepared for it and it's just a genuinely difficult task. This is the time to remember that perfect is the enemy of the good and done is better than perfect. You have to park that perfectionistic quality that is driving you into productive procrastination. You think that if I just read the right resource, if I just do a bit more research on this, I'll be able to figure it out. But you won't, because you won't be sitting there trying to figure out. And you actually have to sit with the silence and with the blank page and the blinking cursor and just do it. Just pick something and you can still edit it and develop it further later. I think it's good to set a little timer, set a little focus friend or something on your phone so that you're not tempted to pick up your phone and scroll on TikTok or play mobile games or whatever you do on your phone, and just sit with it. Sit and try to figure it out. And once that timer is finished, just start typing. Just open up an extra blank document and write everything that comes to mind just to get yourself into a flow state. And eventually the answers might come to you. And it doesn't matter if you bin that blank page at the end of the day. What matters is that you still showed up and you did the work and you tried to fix the problem. And 9 times out of 10, by doing that, you will figure it out. You'll figure something out, even if it's not perfect yet, and you can develop it further later. If it is your first draft and you're not editing, don't be scared of using placeholders or just writing whatever comes to mind and just having it earmarked to come back and fix later. I'm a nightmare for this. I don't use placeholders. I'll just come up with something kind of subpar in the moment, and then sometimes that kind of gets stuck that way. But I do think that's probably why it took me 3 years to write the draft, 12 years from the idea's conception to actually doing it. It's because I was unwilling to use placeholders and just move on and keep up the momentum. Momentum is the most important thing when you're drafting because you can't edit a blank page. So just do whatever you need to do to get through it, and then editing you can figure it out. And lastly, if you do sit down to write and you feel that urge to productively procrastinate, be honest with yourself and ask if that's really necessary. Because a lot of the time, it is just procrastination. And we do kind of lie to ourselves and justify what we're doing to make it seem okay. Like, hey, but I do really need to read in my genre, and I really should, understand structure a bit better. And I should really read more about fascism because I'm writing a fascist government. Like, yeah, that's true. And that's an easy lie to believe, but you don't need to do it now. You can do it later. And if you're getting that drive to procrastinate, ask yourself why you want to procrastinate. Is it because you want to be perfect? Is it because what you're doing is just hard? And it is. Or is something else going on? Like, are you genuinely burnt out, fatigued, going through something emotionally? Because if that's the case, it's much better to just have a genuine rest and be honest about it rather than trying to do all of these other tasks. Because the thing about these productive procrastination tasks is they still take effort. They might take a bit less effort because you can watch a webinar and play a mobile game on your phone while you listen and tell yourself that you're learning, but it still takes effort and it's not the same as having a proper rest. So if the truth is that your heart just isn't in it today and you just would rather go and read a fun romantasy or binge watch Gilmore Girls for 3 hours or play your comfort video game for the millionth time, like, just go do that. Honestly, it's fine. Go for a mental health walk. Take care of yourself, mind and body, and then come back rested, refreshed, and in the right frame of mind to actually do the work that is required and sit down and do that messy draft or that messy edit. Let me know if you're a productive procrastinator as well. What kind of things you do when you're trying to avoid your messy first draft or your messy edit or your tricky edit of all of those placeholders. And let me know if you have any additional tips for how you deal with this. I'm sure we'll all appreciate learning from each other's tips and feeling not alone in this problem. because productive procrastination when it comes to writing a book is just the next level and it's no joke. And I'm sure we all fall prey to it sometimes. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any more topics related to psychology or behaviour when it comes to reading and writing, if you want me to cover them. And subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next video. Bye!